What's going on, guys? What is happening today on this beautiful Wednesday of a day? Oh my God, does it not feel fucking good to record a fucking video right now? So I've recorded several videos since I've been back from New York City, but I didn't have enough data on my phone, so I wasn't able to capture everything I said, and then did this weird split that it was like, oh, started a new video, and then I didn't have it all, and then I couldn't edit it together, and I've been trying to connect my phone to the computer, and I just couldn't edit it all together, and it's fucking annoying. But it is what it is. So today's message, I'll chill out here. And man, now this is like opening me up. Now I feel like, woo! You know, I was in a rut. You know, I was in a freaking rut for the last 2 hours, man. I started thinking about my friend Kevin Tersey. May he rest in peace. He killed himself. He shot himself in the head with a fucking shotgun, and he had a kid. And it was really hitting me all of a sudden. I started crying. I started just thinking about him. And I was like, man, what pain he must have been in to have just got that shotgun up to his fucking head and just fucking do it. You know? And it hit. And I think maybe we need to have times like that to let that shit hit. I think it's very important to let it hit. And then you look at your own life. You know? Kevin, he was my first friend. I grew up in this place in upstate New York. You know, I was a kid, so I didn't have like a first friend. So when I moved to Washington State, I was about 3 years old, and the first friend that I ever had was Kevin. His name was Kevin Tersey. And he, you know, dude, we were like, you remember when you were a kid, you'd do like crisscross, take a pee with your friend, you like cross streams? Man, we would do that, take baths together, all this awesome shit, man. We were friends. Actually, it's so godly and coincidental that I remember one time I had chicken pox, and it was his birthday, and I don't know if it was his birthday, we were supposed to hang out. I had chicken pox, and he had chicken pox. So we still got to hang out, because we both had chicken pox. So it was all good, you know? Cheers. Then around elementary school, you know, I ended up getting a lot of other friends, but I was more of it's weird, I wasn't much of a softie when it came to not my friends. I was willing to fight you if you were my friend. I was willing to just throw punches at you. I would. But with my friends, it was different. I always was very more sensitive, I guess, about my friends. And, you know, when we were always solo hanging out, all of us, we would always get along, but then when there was other people there, they'd always just pick on me, right? They'd always pick on me. Clearly, there was a reason why they picked on me, right? You learn that as you get older. My dad wasn't really around. I'm not saying it's his fault, but my dad wasn't really around. I didn't have that masculine figure to like trash talk and do all of that. You know, my mom did have a boyfriend, but I didn't respect him at that time of my life. I have more of a different respect for him now. But I didn't respect him like that. He wasn't my father, you know. So I didn't have that as a kid until I moved back to New York. And you know, I also made other friends, but they would pick on me a lot, you know. And I remember seeing Kevin again when I was 12, before I came back to New York. I think I was 12 or 11. And I do remember my mom's ex-boyfriend did make a really funny joke after this. But I see Kevin, he gained a lot of weight, and I saw him at a GameStop, and he, without anything being said, he just said, hey, man, I'm really sorry how I was treating you back then, man. You know, he apologized to me without nothing. There was no conversation there, you know, and I could tell my mom's ex-boyfriend, he did care about me. And I could see why, certain reasons on why he might have flipped out and done the things that he did, but he did care about me. But I remember my mom's ex-boyfriend was like, at the time, he was like, his name is Lorenzo. Yeah, at the time, he was like, what the fuck? Man, he gained a lot of weight. What the fuck? Did he, like, walk by a bakery or something? I thought that was, did he walk by a buffet? You know, and I was like, damn. Yeah, even at that time, I was like, that's funny. That's fucking funny. He's like, what, did he walk by a buffet? That was fucking funny. I was like, nice. Nice. All right. But I remember, I came back to New York, and then I went to visit my mom. It was still out in Washington. There's this place called Port Angeles. I'll say that. I don't live there now, but Port Angeles, Washington, is all the way to the west of Washington State. You can get a boat there, take you to Victoria. I think it's Victoria or Vancouver. I think it's Vancouver, Canada. You can take a boat. It's a port town, So there was a lot of hardened people in the place that I lived in. You don't have to grow up in a ghetto, essentially, to be around hard people. But I was around a lot of hard, tough, kind of manly man's men kind of people, 100%. And but I came to visit, and at this point in my life, I've been breakdancing. I was working out a lot. I could bench. I was 19. I could bench press over 300 pounds. I was squatting over 400. So I was strong. I was way more than I was when I was younger. And I remember I ended up hanging out with Kevin, and we're hanging out, and I remember I just did like a standing backflip. I did a backflip, and I remember one thing he said. He's like, "Wow, dude, I didn't realize I had like one of the most coolest friends ever," and I know he meant it. And he, one thing me and Kevin used to do back in elementary school, we'd always arm wrestle. He always used to beat me. We went to the gym. I'm benching more than him. I'm curling more than him. Stronger than him in a lot of those aspects. And then we arm wrestle. Fucking beat me, man. Still had that fucking forearm strength. And he crushed me. Every time I was like, what the fuck? He fucking crushed me, And, I think it was probably maybe 5, 6, 7 years later. He ends up fucking killing himself. He was such in a dark place that he blasted himself in the head. He was so dark in such a place that he blasted himself in the head with a shotgun. He killed himself. And I didn't, he would hit me up. And I really wish that I talked to him more. It's like one of those situations where you're like, maybe if I was there for them more, they might have, they might have, it might have changed the tides, right? It might have changed the tides. And his little brother hit me up, who I never met, and his little brother messaged me on Facebook, and he's like, my brother would talk to you. He would talk about you a lot, right? He would talk about you a lot, and he said you were awesome. You were an amazing guy. So, so I was just sitting on that for a little bit. These last 2 to 3 hours, a little bit, maybe the last 2 hours, it's hit me, and I believe that there's a higher power, and I think that God tries to reach us as much as possible. Come on, man. I think God tries to reach us as much as possible, and sometimes you can have thoughts that hit you that you're not even purposely thinking, they just hit you, right? And I remember I was living with my mom for a while, and this fucking chairs all fucked up right here. I was living with my mom for a while, the last 2 years ago for maybe 5 years on and off. The last time I was with her, I remember, I go to this park and I'm hanging out. I'm doing some pull-ups and stuff like that, and there's a group of kids. They're there's 3 of them, and I remember thinking, I was like, wow, that kid reminds me of Kevin. And then mid-pull-up, one of the kids is he's like, hey, Kevin. He says his name was Kevin. I didn't talk to these kids. It just reminded me, so it's God's funny. So it's I think of Kevin sometimes, and I look at my life, and I'm like, it's like I know that I can. God has blessed me so much and allowing me. That's why I think remembering your life is so important. You know, when you remember your life and you look back on your life and you see the ways that God has put certain people in your life, try to make you stronger, you know. And I look at my life and I'm like, I could be doing more. You know, I could be doing more. I could be something better. And it's not like some grandiose, like, I'll be a movie star, but maybe that's a part of it. Maybe part of it is you being a movie star and, like, fulfilling those dreams. And, you know, I think the point here with this video was that I think sometimes you need to have those times where you're in a fucking rut and you are really sitting down and really remembering and really, like, thinking about stuff that's happened in your life, because I'm never going to see it ever again, you know. So, you know, I like to believe that maybe there's like an afterlife and stuff like that, but I don't know. So it's like, you never know. You're never going to see these people ever again. And it's not trivial, you know what I'm saying? It's not trivial. Oh, come on, brother. Maybe I gotta smoke a fucking cigarette right now. You're never gonna see these people ever again. And, you know, I think that America especially, we live in this weird place of, we think so much. We think about the wrong things. We think about, like, psychology and therapeutical bullshit and, oh, you're sad and all this crap, you know, like it's a bad thing to be sad, it's a bad thing to be angry. It's not. Because when you're angry and you're sad, you remember what's important a lot of the times, if you can think about it and you can change your perspective. And I was in such this rut, I felt like I couldn't get out of it. And I started trying to call my friends. There's one friend back in Port Angeles who called me the other day, and I have to call him. His name's Kyle. And I kind of call him back because sometimes you need to call a friend. You need to call somebody. You need to talk to somebody because it'll get you out of your head. You know, because you can be in there too much. You don't want to be in there too much. You don't want to overthink too much. You need to get out of there. Because you need to get out of there. Because you could have a whole bunch of shit with being in your head. You know, you need to get out of there. You need to call a friend. Calling a friend can break you out of that cycle. Because now you're being challenged in this way. It wakes you up. You know, you're not going to be this perfect guy who's like, thinks he has all the answers when you're talking to your friend. You might be able to try to hold on to that, but the excitement and the passion, the love and the joy might all come out. And like, oh my God, I'm alive. I'm alive. You know, I'm alive. And, you know, it's, you know, my YouTube channel, it's like, I don't think there's anything wrong with having certain, like, personas and things, people you look up to and things and ways you want to bring it, you know. Look at the squirrel. The squirrel is a maneuver. I'm not going to show you the squirrel, but well, maybe I will show you the squirrel without fucking stopping the video. If you could see the squirrel. I don't know if you could see it, but there he is. He's on a fucking tree, and he was, like, walking through the fence. Well, now he's going up the tree. But, you know, call a friend. You know, call a friend, and it can wake you up out of your mind when you're thinking too much. Call a friend. Talk to somebody. After this, you know, you're not God. You don't have all the answers. Sometimes maybe you need to detach yourself from people to really sit on the things that you really care about. You gotta, you know, some people be like, lock in, it's the winter, you know, all this shit. But what I'm aware of, and it's a reminder for me all the time, is like, we got one life to live, man. And, you know, I asked my mom for a picture because she has a bunch of photo books. And there's pictures of me and Kevin. I remember I think I dressed up as a ninja. I forgot what he dressed up as. This is Halloween. I think he was a cowboy. You know, and I want to look at that as a reminder, you know, because for all I know, we got one life to live, you know. So it's like, you know, try to live the best life you can, and that doesn't mean you can't like relax and have a beer and chill. That's a part of this beauty of life, of being able to relax and have laughs with your friends, you know. And then the other part is sometimes locking in and going hard, but like you gotta find that balance for you, you know. And you might find a good video on YouTube. You might find certain people like, oh, you gotta do this, you gotta do this. But it's like, what's your swoon? What makes you swoon? Like, what makes you, you know? That could be sometimes just going out in the backyard, putting on some old video game music and listening to that shit and just being like, oh my God, life is beautiful. You know, life is beautiful. It's very, very, very beautiful. And there's a lot of horrible things that happen in life, you know, but it's not that we want bad things to happen, obviously, but, you know, the whole good and bad and sad and happy, it's like these are, without that, it's like you wouldn't even be able to appreciate. You just be like a fucking retarded, you know, not even retarded in like the people where they always seem to enjoy life. You just be a zombie. You'd be like all blissed out, you know. And life has so many different turns. And you know, I think Kevin already thinks I'm a badass. It's not like I got to do a whole bunch of shit. But I wonder if Kevin would look at how I'm living right now. And it's not like I'm living bad. I still run. I still work out. But it's like, it's almost like feeling like I know, not because I'm being told, but because there's something inside me that like knows that I could be doing more. And I could be more caring. And more caring doesn't mean that I just like accept everything everybody's doing. But I could be there for my friends. You know, and you got to be there for yourself too. You know what I mean? You're not a one-man army. Maybe you are. But, you know, really contemplate. And, like, sometimes you might have too many boundaries. And now my friend Calvin's calling me right now. I'll call him right back. But sometimes you might have too many boundaries, and those boundaries are actually stopping you from really enjoying life. And it's good to have boundaries. You need to have boundaries, of course. But sometimes you might be too walled up. You know, I had somebody who's like, you don't trust anybody. And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with not trusting people. But I think it's okay to have some trust in people. You know, you have these memes or these things where it's like, nobody cares about you. That's such bullshit. These kids, I feel bad for these kids that are not experiencing life. I was talking to this kid the other day. He's like 19, talking about red pill, blue pill. And he's like, seems like you have a lot of red pill stuff, but you also say blue pill shit. And I'm like, you know, bro, maybe you need to get out of your house and, like, go, like, talk to people and live life. Oh, that pissed me off. Fuck that. Oh, that was awesome. I like that. That was cool. You learn that through life, through being out there. You know, you don't learn that from watching a video. Do your knowledge. Don't fucking, well, I got all this knowledge. I got the crystal ball of thoughts. It's like with this fucking phone. You know, and it's a double-edged sword. But, you got to go out there and experience life. You got to go live life, man. And I've definitely lived life. And I still am, and I still tend to do that. And I don't want to stop. And sometimes some people are going to look at you like you're an idiot, like you're stupid. Let them think that. Be the fool. Be okay with being the fool. Be okay with also being respected. Find the balance, you know. But, yeah, call your friend. After this, I'm going to call my friend. Because you can get so into that. And like your story's so wrapped around that. But if you look at yourself, all you're doing is just sitting there thinking and doing nothing at all. You're just sitting there and you're just thinking and doing nothing. It's getting you nowhere. You're not doing anything. You're missing out. You're looking too much at the finger and you're not seeing all of heaven's glory. And acting and doing stuff. And be okay with looking like a fool. To your parents, to your friends. Because the right people will come into your life. Your parents are, you know, they're there and you care about them, you know. But they have their own preconceived notions, and it is one of those things. It's there's a beauty in that because they do care about you if they're in your life. They do. They're not in your life at all, but that's a different story. Not all parents are actually care, you know. And if you do have parents that care, that's a good thing. And it might be hard to be able to see that, and it doesn't mean you just accept everything that they do or say either, you know. But yeah, so I got to call my friend now. So, you know, I say if you're in a rut, call a friend. They might not answer yet, but maybe they'll call you later. You know, another thing too, like I got up. I say a whole bunch of things. Like, I don't think that jerking off in your home. Sometimes maybe you do have to jerk off to get it out of you, so you can like be like posting out clarity. Like, what the fuck am I doing? You know. But it was like I talked this to my friend before, and he was like, yeah, it's like when I'm jerking off for porn. It's like, and then everybody wants to hit me up. It's like their soul, without them even realizing, is like, don't do that. Come outside. Go outside. Let's go do stuff. And you're like, no, you know. Get out there. Even if it's uncomfortable at times, get out there. Take your time to have some peace, you know, as well, but get out there. You got one life to live, as far as I know, but that's all I know. And I'm trying to go off of what I know and not what I theorize, because I could theorize shit all day. It's not on my face. I don't actually know. So, yeah. I'm going to end this right here. Call a friend, man. If you're in a rut, call a freaking friend. And I'll leave it at that, you guys. Peace out.